October 30th at 10:30. Elijah Montgomery Burns was taken from us.
What a start.
So in mourning, we want the show to go on. So we have the next best replacement for Eli, his body snatcher. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I am body snatched. Totally
Can you at least
human,
try to
yeah.
sound a little convincing?
Totally human, yeah.
So
we found out Eli was a Fed on that date. Explain yourself. Explain what opinion you hold that caused us to think you got body snatched.
Okay, so I've been looking at recent sets that have been coming out for Magic as of late, and I've been reviewing some of the cards, some of the designs, the arts, et cetera, etc. And I'm not nearly as opposed to the Universes Beyond stuff as I used to be. Like, at first, I was kind of like very against it because I was like, this is a core thing that should be against the game because like you're bringing a bunch of weird things that don't belong to Magic. But like, the more I've looked at the designs and what it's done for the game in terms of bringing fans from other areas outside of Magic into the game because they see something they're familiar with, it can help the game grow a little bit. Like we talk about how Magic is dead all the time, but like I don't think it's nearly as bad as we thought.
Like, Magic is arguably bigger than ever. The most successful selling set of all time was the Lord of the Rings set.
Yeah. Now there's a little caveat. That's why that was the most successful though, because people were trying to buy it, get the One of One Ring. But that's not the core set itself too, because you could get it only in the collector's boosters. So they were selling regular packs too. And I honestly believe that as a whole, it would be wrong for us to ostracize anybody that is introduced to the game through Universes Beyond, and for us to continue to ostracize them for using those cards because they're not going to go away.
They're not.
I completely agree with Eli. David? Why are you wrong?
Why am I? Excuse me, motherfucker. Why am I wrong? All right. So first of all, let me make this clear. I don't want to yuck anyone's yum, okay? I don't want to tell anyone that they can't play with Cloud Strife at my table if they don't want to. They want to play with Cloud Strife at my table, when have him wield the golden spatula from SpongeBob SquarePants, and like go right ahead. You know, that's fine. But I will tell you right now, I maintain the statement that Magic is dead. I will always maintain it, because I don't know if Eli or you, Sherry, are both aware of some of the more recent developments that have come out of WotC as of recent. But I'll go over them just to make sure we're all on the same page. So first of all, Wizards has announced that they are going to be releasing 6 sets of standard every single year going forward. Okay, 6 sets that are standard legal. All right. Yes, I know it gets better.
Half Universes Beyond and half are normal.
I'll go through it. Half of them are going to be dedicated to the MTG storyline. The other half are going to be Universes Beyond sets. Next year, we've already confirmed, is going to be a Spider-Man set in Standard. Congratulations, you get to play as Aunt May. And she gets to wield a Buster Sword from Final Fantasy, because that's another set that's coming out next year. And both of them are standard legal, combined with a third set that we've already confirmed has delayed the return to Lorwyn to 2026 to make room for Universes Beyond number 3. Okay? So there's 3 sets in Standard that are not going to have anything to do with Magic the Gathering in terms of lore. Okay? Which is, when I say Magic is dead, I don't mean it financially. That's clearly not true. We've seen the game boom and bust and grow like crazy ever since Universes Beyond began, and in terms of finances, it's been a huge resounding success. But in terms of the artistry and why I fell for the game, in myself and a lot of people I imagine also fell for the game, Magic is dead. Because a lot of what made it special has been ripped away from it, and is going to continue to be ripped away because of the pursuit for more money. And I mean, I don't. It's hard not to see Universes Beyond cards in standard as an extension of that, especially since we were promised many times over that this would never happen, that we never would get as far as standard, that would be left alone.
Yeah, that is a fair point. They did mention that when they were first starting these, that these would never be standard legal cards. It's like the thing that always comes up for me, like I still have my personal grievances against Universes Beyond, but it's not like I'm super against it anymore the way I used to be. But the one thing that I always have like a slight hold up about is how do they plan to reprint these cards? Because for them to be able to do that, they have to maintain the license for the IP to be able to use it again. And I don't know if it works where they can just throw it in and just say, yep, this is being reprinted because it's widely popular and it needs to be reprinted.
Well, remember, there's also in-universe, I think it's like, was it like about a year afterwards you get in-universe reprints of it? And that's started already.
Is that still the plan for them to do that?
I don't see
so.
any other way they can do it, because...
And in that case, then, is it like, it's just going to be the same card with a different name?
Yeah, they've already done this.
So in that case, then you could have effectively two copies of the same card in your deck.
No, they are functionally, and in Magic, they are the same card.
Okay.
So you cannot have, like, let's say, I'm going to say, you can't have Teferi, Master of Marvel, and then, let's say it's a Teferi,
like it's a Professor
Marvel
X
Manipulator.
Card.
Yeah. Some sort of UB card. You can still only have in, like, in normal formats, competitive formats, you can still only have 4 of that exact same cards, because functionally and mechanically they are the same. And that actually does show on some of the stuff on Scryfall. Like, you can find different versions of the same card.
So it's up to the deck builders to delineate those when they're building the decks.
Correct.
I'm also concerned about how they're going to keep 3 sets per year of Universes Beyond going, but I mean, there's a lot they could draw from.
So, like, here's kind of the thing that gets me about this, is that, like, standard rotation is every 3 years, right? Like, effectively, a set stays in standard for around 3 years. There's going to be 6 sets every year. That standard card pool is going to be massive by the time we're through. How do you balance? How do you, like, ensure that there aren't going to be combos that come in and wreck the game? And this has always been something that's been a problem for WotC, but it's going to be worse now because you have so many more possibilities you have to test and play with.
I mean, I don't think that argument is as legitimate anymore, because we have now, with Foundations coming up and basically having a level of what the basically expected power level of Standard is going to be. Standard is probably going to function a lot towards what Pioneer is right now, so in terms of power level, but I think they'll still do bans. Like,
I mean,
it's like,
do you have any guarantee of that? Like, because there's real financial incentive for them now not to ban some of these cards. You know, maybe their partners don't want them banned, or maybe they just see the card as too marketable, it's too much of a chase for a set to go into. You know, can we really say that anymore? Like,
yes,
I want to
can
believe that, but I don't know if I can believe that.
So that actually gets at a very important issue, that, like, this is, for Wizards, banning a card immediately has always been a problem. Because when it is immediate, they're always going to wait to the next quarter or wait until after a competitive series of competitive events. Like, for example, the Nadu bandings in basically every format. They waited until their quarterly update, or whenever it was, or after major tournaments. I don't think that's going to change much, because we have to still think about Magic isn't for Standard anymore. It hasn't been for, like, probably 4 or 5 years now. It's a game for Commander. As long as it's not banned in Commander, people don't care.
But Standard is, like, the accepted major format in Arena, though. Like, it is still, you know, it's not the most popular way to play Magic on a tabletop anymore. I get that. But it's kind of one of the only ways to play Magic on Arena, which they really want to push towards. You know, can you say for sure that that's going to still be the same way? Like, can we guarantee that they're going to still use the same criteria for banning Universes Beyond cards? You know, that doesn't really answer the point. Like, I'm trying to.
So so Arena, so this is actually a completely different thing. they've already done this before because a lot of you guys have heard of Alchemy, right? Exists so they can fix bad cards, especially bad cards in their formats in historic, timeless, and I think there's one besides standard. I think there's one other big format that's in arena. Those exist so they can modify cards and power down cards, and they still release these along with each set. I think it's like 30 alchemy cards. Usually it's because they have the mechanic conjure in there or things you can't functionally or easily do in paper. They've already been modifying cards for that, and they are distinguished arena only cards. So you don't see, like, for example, if Blood Artist is in there and they think this is you gaining the life afterwards is too strong, they can remove the gaining the life and it's just losing life. Like that's kind of the great thing about arena is that it essentially is its own ecosystem.
Sure, I guess it's just like those cards that you listed off as alchemy cards, like they're, is that going to, again, it creates a separation of like whether, if Universes Beyond gets treated this way while normal MTG gets treated that way. I don't want that to happen. I want every set to be treated more or less the same way. And there's no guarantee of that now that a third party is involved, dipping their toes in and looking to make all this money for licensing out their characters and their properties.
But it's always been this. It's been this way for several years in arena. And you were bringing this issue up now?
They were never in standard before now. The Universes Beyond stuff never made it to arena before then.
Yeah, they have.
Why it's a problem now?
They're in historic.
Sure. Yeah.
Which is kind of the equivalent of Pioneer on arena, for those who don't know.
Sure. Okay.
It's like they've been adding these cards. In fact, there are some cards that are actually probably.
Okay, I need to fact check something here. I don't know if there are any what Universes Beyond cards are in this format, because I don't think Lord of the Rings stuff fits in there.
In historic, I believe it depends on which one. They're kind of inconsistent about what enters historic, but let's go with Lord of the Rings. I'm pretty positive it's in historic. Let's go with.
Yeah, I need to fact check this because I just got to be sure.
I know for a fact that the Lost Caverns of Ixalan Jurassic World is in there. I'm pretty positive those skins are in there.
Right.
Let's do historic. Oh, Explorer was the word I was looking for. Explorer is the other format. It's hard to have a log of what's actually legal in those formats because they don't have distinguishing sets, except Alchemy does. Alchemy has about 30 cards per release.
It's really hard to find legality on.
Right.
Outside of the game,
the top of our heads.
You'd have to.
So, Timeless, Brawl, Historic, Alchemy. Like they do Scryfall it makes it exceedingly difficult to
Scryfall calls out every card legality wise. It says it's not legal for Alchemy, Explorer, Historic. So I'm willing to bet that they're probably not in MTG Arena.
Yeah, it's also I mean, it is difficult for me to say whenever because I don't pay attention to it. I'm aware every once in a while that they do these historic anthologies or Explorer anthologies and they add more cards to it.
Sorry, the Assassin's Creed set was not legal, but the Lord of the Rings one is. So it's legal in Historic, Brawl, Timeless, and so I guess Historic and Brawl are the two that are going to be the ones that. Okay. So not every card obviously ends up on Arena, but I think the majority of the cards do.
They end up in one way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is that threes. I also want to discuss the volume. This volume is setting themselves up not to do Universes Beyond long term. Yeah. 3 sets a year is a lot. Like, I'm excited for Universes Beyond near Drakengard, of course. I'm excited for that. I'll buy 10 booster boxes of it. But I don't see them I see them, the well will run dry. And when because all it really takes is for a Universes Beyond set to really bomb. Like there's like when the well starts drying up, it's going to dry up hard, and then Wizards will correct itself based on this natural capitalistic response.
Yeah, they can only do this for so long before it's actually going to filter out.
Counterpoint to that, I was almost certain that the Walking Dead set, the very first one of these Universes Beyond sets to ever happen, was going to bomb because the show was basically dead at that point. You know, the show, like the entire property had left the cultural zeitgeist, and yet it did well enough for them to keep going with this. Like, can we really? I don't know. There's just so much that can just be called into question here, and so much that can be called into doubt, that my ability to trust that they will preserve the integrity and the kind of identity of Magic is so gone, you know, because again, you're taking away from sets that people have been wanting for years. Like Lorwyn got delayed a year, even though by all accounts it was pretty much ready to go for 25, and then delayed it to 26 to make room for Universes Beyond #3.
I actually think the reason that behind that is because they realized that Duskmourn and Bloomburrow were way too similar to Lorwyn. That's the actual
sure,
reason.
but it's still not a good look. Like, it doesn't really matter why they did it. The fact that they still did it for Universes Beyond set, to me, is extremely suspect. You know, I think a lot of people would feel the same way. You know, and it's a different, obviously, thing if they put in, like, say, hey, we're gonna return to Amonkhet, or we're gonna go back to, or we're gonna introduce this new setting. You know, I think people would feel a little differently about that and just say, okay, sure, fine, I get it. But the fact that they're saying, oh, we have a third secret Universes Beyond set that we are not revealing yet in place of this is just a bad look.
I'm going to be honest here, and this is going to you're probably going to blow up at me for saying this. I think their ideas for standard sets, and this is going to hurt when I say this, I think they're running out of ideas and they need to stretch the ideas a little and give them more time to think. Because 4 sets a year, when you're trying to basically starting from scratch, which is basically anything post, was it Aftermath, if you want to even consider that a set, they basically got to start over. I think that they'd rather keep the story there, because like you've seen kind of the lore ebb and flow a little bit with these more recent sets, and they did 4 or 5 standard sets recently. I think they're starting to burn out of like more creative ideas. I mean, we're getting an like Aether Drift, which is a death race one, which I never would have thought would have happened, but it's like it's happening. I think they're running out of ideas and need to explore more creatively and have more time to do it. With 4 sets a year, they can't do it, especially that the last 2 sets are usually like the distance between Duskmourn and Bloomburrow was not a long time.
So that brings me to the question then, Sherry, why are they doing 6 standard sets a year then?
Because they can make, I think the design for mechanics, like other cards, that's an endless well. I don't think that'll ever dry up. The IPs make it easier to separate, like, hey, let's separate the story. We'll have 3 big story releases a year.
But
and maybe it gets to develop a little bit, because the lore, the amount of they have more time to develop the lore, and these lore, I don't know if they'll actually do this, but they'll have more time to tell the story. In fact, there might be like different ways they're releasing it, because they're not releasing a set 2 months, or wow, I just looked at that, almost less than 2 months between each other. They can do this.
That's a rough release schedule for 2025. I'm looking at it right now. Fucking February, April, then June, August. They're all 2 months apart.
I think I think they're having issues keeping up this and keeping any sense of lore. I'd rather them take a step back, not have to think as story-wise with Spider-Man. You don't have to think about that. You just get art for it and you make cards.
The story of Spider-Man to reference. You don't need to do anything else. It's pretty, like, they don't have to think too hard about that one. They just have to think about how the cards are going to work. For me, I think lore-wise, they wrote themselves into a corner now, since they don't have any overarching big bad. So now they need to step back and start doing these, the smaller stories again, where they're not going to be trying to do this interweaving story where every set has to relate to the last story that was told. I think they could do themselves a lot of justice if they step back and do that, instead of trying to keep this interwoven plot continued.
In terms of the lore, that makes complete sense, but in terms of card design, why it still doesn't answer the question of why are they doing 6 sets a year then? That doesn't just
we're not talking about the actual mechanics of the card. We're talking from specific lore standpoint.
Right. And
they could release 10 cards a day, or they probably release 100 cards a day every day for the next year, and not run out of ideas. because they can try stuff like that and then just ban it later otherwise. It's like they're literally printing money. There's no risk for them coming up with one bad idea, because one bad idea out of 300 doesn't matter.
They care about printing out volume. They're basically throwing a lot of stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks, I think. It's not a good... I don't agree with the release schedule on this, to be fair. Like, I like the Universes Beyond stuff a little bit. It still has, like I said, it has some of my issues with it, but I think personally this release schedule that they're giving us is a bit aggressive.
I mean, we could speculate all day as to why they're doing this. At the end of the day, none of us in the room. We don't get to know why they made that decision.
And the odds are the answer is simply because they can and they want to make.
That is probably the most realistic answer that we could get.
It's screwing over the local game store, though.
Oh, are you kidding me?
I'm in for the very small ones. It does, but for most average size mom and pops, I think they're still selling. Like they wouldn't be doing this because the last 2 years have been nonstop releases, and they've still been selling. They wouldn't increase if there wasn't a want for it. It depends on how you view yourself. I am more of a collector now and getting into competitive formats, and it's like you guys are a little bit more outside the game now, just viewing it as observers and what you experienced when you were playing versus now it's a lot different.
I'm extremely disenfranchised with the game. I have no plans or expectations to buy any Magic the Gathering products for probably the next 10 years. Simply because I just don't want to keep up with it anymore.
That is a lie. You're going to buy the Spider-Man set.
Don't call me out like that.
Exposed here on national TV. I'm pretty outside the game at this point, quite honestly. But when I heard about this, I just thought, this is outrageous. How can they hope to keep that kind of volume up and keep people? Because it's just so much. It's ignoring the fact that they can, do all these alterations and call it all these erratas and do all these bannings. The simple fact of the matter is it's a lot of cards to deal with for 3 years. That problem doesn't go away when you do 6 a year.
Maybe these are going to be smaller sets. We don't know the details of these yet. We don't are these all 200 card sets? That's the thing we haven't considered.
They're standard size, so I imagine, they probably are full size sets.
I'm saying are we talking 200? Because 200 is a small standard set. Or is it going to be 150 cards with 3 different kinds of treatments?
Even if it's 200 cards a set, that's still 3,600 cards for that entire pool of standard by the time that rotates out.
Yeah. I mean, that's the same with four with 300 a year, which is what they were doing last year.
Sure, but I don't think they're going to do 200 card sets at all. I don't think that's realistic for them. I think it's going to be they may reduce, but they will more likely stay even.
You guys think that some of these cards are generated by AI now? The design of them, they just ask them, make a card that could do this, and then they tune it a little bit.
No, I don't think they would be allowed to get away with that. I would hope not, at least.
I mean, there are card making AIs.
I'm not saying
I doubt WotC would use them.
I'm not saying the art itself is, but maybe just because of the aggressiveness of this release schedule. I don't know how much effort they put into R&D for this stuff, because they have to not only design but test it all too. That's a lot.
Well, they haven't tested in years.
You're right. Sorry.
It's been 10 years since that happened. When they got rid of the Future League or whatever it is. It's been we're saying this 5 years beyond a lot of this stuff. All the stuff has been happening, and whether or not we've been paying attention, it's just going to continue to happen because it's just printing money. The paper that they spend is less than the amount that they can get people to pay for it. And until that, it's they'll keep making things. They'll keep doing it. They'll release more standard sets. And eventually the market for these cards is going to regress. And Wizards doesn't know it yet, but they will have an epic flopping set. Because when they go to Fallen Empires 2, no one's going to buy it.
I'll buy it.
That's when you'll get back in the game for Fallen Empires 2.
Damn right it is.
But think about this. It's these sets are, it's like they can only keep making money for so long until an idea truly flops, and I actually do see that coming. I don't think the Aether Drift set is going to go well.
Why do you think that?
It's just a gut feeling. I don't think a death race across multiple planes works as well. It's like it's just going to be an artifact set, basically, like artifacts and vehicles, obviously, and mounts too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be like
Kaladesh with a little bit more freedom, but I just don't see people taking an interest.
But here's the thing. Kaladesh had its own world building. It had its own plot line going in that was built up for some time. It had its own cast of characters. Aether Drift doesn't really have a whole lot of that, does it? Like,
it's got the death race.
It's got a death race, yeah. Whereas Kaladesh, the little competition death race thing was really just kind of icing on top of the cake that the set already was. You know? Like I think the problem creatively with Magic now and why they feel they may need to do this, like Sherry's theorizing, is simply that there's just like they've taken a trope or a setting and splashed Magic characters on it. Like Thunder Junction was Magic in the Wild West. Murder at Karlov Manor.
That was actually a bunch of villains.
Mysteries.
But my point stands, though, Sherry. That doesn't change anything I said.
You know, that's actually really fair, though.
Like, Murder at Karlov Manor was Clue, but with Magic characters.
I mean, that actually did not sell well. It's considered now a failure.
Right, and it is a failure, but it's a failure. It was a failure financially because it was a failure creatively because there was nothing there of substance. You know,
they went back to Ravnica and had no intention of really paying attention to it. This is where like the market will correct Wizards. Wizards is going to have a bigger flop. I think it's going to be Aether Drift because it's also the beginning of the year when people statistically have less money than they do because of holiday bills and different and varying things, because your insurance resets and a whole bunch of other economic reasons. You have less money to spend, and on top of a questionable question, I see this as like Wizards is going to get a couple hard wake up calls in the next few years, and we'll see them correct accordingly.
Or hopefully they could steer further into the skid of Universes Beyond. That could certainly happen if Universes Beyond sets do as well as, you know, they're presumably expecting. Like if the Spider-Man set does gangbusters, or if Final Fantasy is a huge hit, which I think that one might actually bomb. Like it's a big IP, but it's the audience there is I would think fairly narrow.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm looking forward to the Magic the Gathering Infinity War set. You know,
oh, God,
we already had that. They're not gonna do that for at least 2 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, like that's the thing. They do all these combined things with IP. I mean, they've already done like the Secret Layers with Marvel. That's some spent cachet. They've already done it. It loses the appeal of newness. Them doing it again won't sell as much because they're like,
right.
You've already done the big characters. Like
and we've gotten to the core of why this is a bad business decision, because you only have so many high value IPs that you can leverage into this product to get people into it, and that would be interested in getting into it.
Yes, but this is getting people into the game, which is, I do believe, is a good thing. But the thing is, sometimes you have to let people make mistakes, and Wizards, they'll find a way to screw something up. It's not going to take, like, do I think Nier Automata, the Universes Beyond set, will bomb? I think yeah, because I'm a huge fan, and we have a small dedicated fan base, but that wouldn't sell.
It'll sell.
No, probably. Not to the amount Wizards would need to make it worth it.
And they still have to be friendly too. That's why Final Fantasy is going to have issues. If they have to be very careful on what IPs they're doing, because a lot of IPs are just too sexual for what they are trying to go for, because they're trying to appeal to a mass audience. That's why I don't see this being kept up, and I think this is them. It's going to course correct.
Here's the mistake they're gonna make. All right, here's the mistake. I'm calling it now. I'm calling my shot right here. In 5 years, there's gonna be Magic the Gathering Universes Beyond VTuber edition, and it's gonna go horribly. They're gonna just have a bunch of VTubers on Magic cards, and everyone's gonna look at that and be like, "What the fuck are we doing?"
Yeah,
I see that actually a variation of that happening sooner.
So
I already think the Final Fantasy set's not going to do well, But I think there's going to be a set that they're going to really think, oh man, this is going to be great Magic design. And it could be a great set. Who knows? It's entirely possible. But it'll just be so niche or so narrow that it won't sell.
Yeah. So I guess my statement of Universes Beyond is doing okay. I say right now it is doing all right, but the future state of it, I am unaware of, and I may stay unaware of because of how far away from the game I am at this point. We'll find out, I guess. I keep
We'll
a tab
revisit
on
this in 1 year.
Yeah, I keep a tab on it every so often, and it's like, okay, the game seems to be doing all right. People are not super upset about the stuff, but like, I'm not gonna get super involved on every set like this because.
And to address the new players point a little bit, like I agree, there's value in bringing in new players. I think there's much more value in keeping those players around, and
Absolutely.
I don't see that there is like I see what they're doing is so alienating to a lot of new player or current players that they're jumping ship. People are going to stop playing. I would think people are going to stop playing. I've stopped playing because of stuff like this, like it's certainly not something.
I mean, the same thing happened. It's why this has happened before. It's like they're going to go this one way and people are going to become less interested. Like, for example, when the rise of FPS shooters came, that affected the game a lot. And then eventually they had to correct. We're in an ebb and a flow in this game. I think, this will correct itself or the game will die. And the game is big enough to where even if the Wizards goes out of business, that we still have options for all this giant card pool. This game is made up of like 30,000 cards or something like that now.
I mean, Wizards goes belly up. There's still a lot of fans of the game. It's not like it's going to stop the game. It'll stop standard. It'll stop like constructed formats like that. But any of the self-regulated formats, they'll be fine.
So we're saying Cube is the only way to play?
Yes, sir.
All right, great.
Well, Cube, obviously the Always Eternal format extended, and Duo standard. We'll always have that.
Duo standard.
Who wants to send us out?
David, do it.
All right, I'll do it. Fine. So these were good points. And this was a good discussion. I do overall want to kind of have us all summate our points a little bit. And I guess I'll start. I think that this is a dangerous precedent to set creatively in terms of the Magic narrative. I do think financially, yes, it makes sense why you would do this. But I also am of the mindset that this will implode somewhere down the line. And I worry that a lot of the great things we could have had with Magic going forward are compromised or will be lost because we doubled down on this experiment that may look good at the time, but we didn't pull back far enough to see how empty the void was. I'll go to Sherry now.
To summarize what I think that we just have to let Wizards make the mistake to have a really bad quarter, even a really bad year. And then they'll look inwards and then they will adjust. Wizards is a much more dynamic company than a lot of other companies out there, and they're willing to actually listen to the players to an extent. It's something that will either correct itself or it'll bring a ton of people into the game. I know a lot of people that I've talked with at game stores that got into the game because of these Universes Beyond, and that was something I didn't really see, especially like when this first was coming out. It's like because I was around a bunch of older players. But it's a thing, and people are okay with it, and no one really hates it as much as some people on the internet might hate it. I think it's here to stay. I think it gives them time to develop the lore a lot more, to give them time to write themselves out of this corner. And I think, I just think that standard's going to be fine. It's either just going to die a death, which has been theorized for years, or nothing's going to happen. It's just going to keep going on, keep marching forward. Eli?
Yeah, good points there from both of you. But I personally think that as of whole right now, it's easy to say that the Universes Beyond has been successful and that it's been doing what it's been aimed to do in terms of garnering more money, bringing new people in, and getting more exposure for the game. Future state of it, I think, is still uncertain. It's easy to make the claim that they're going to kill the game by continuing to do this. We won't know until some of these sets come out and have more cards released for us to be able to actually see them, see how the design looks, and if the fan base and the player base itself tries to keep up with these sets or not, because it really depends on the economic conditions around these set releases as well, because there's a lot of factors that are out there right now that are probably preventing some people from wanting to buy Magic cards, and for them to keep releasing sets like this, it's just going to keep those people out of it. So it's hit or miss as whether or not we're going to end up with, continued growth of the game, or if we're going to level set and stay where we're at.
I would like to make one addendum to that. I went to a game store earlier this week, and I have repeatedly seen this game store. I was picking up a board game, the original Dune game, for those who are interested. We'll discuss that game whenever we play it again. And I've seen the same Assassin's Creed boosters on sale. Nothing's moved. I haven't seen anything sold. And that was something that was released this year, not too long ago. It was back in July, and that stopped moving. That's all I'd like to say. It's just people will stop buying these, and the course will correct.
On that cheery note, we'd like to leave you off for today's episode of Turn Zero Loss. We didn't actually say what the name of the podcast was, but hey, we're doing it a little artsy today. So feel free to like, subscribe, comment, do all the good stuff there. Follow us on Twitter/X for however long it stays quote unquote free. And yeah, see you guys then. Magic is dead.
Goodbye.
Or is it?